All right, we're back, and it is COMP305. That's Game Programming 1, and it is Fall 2016 semester at Centennial, Week 1, Part 3 of our broadcast. And what we just finished talking about was this little funky spaceship we made. A little ugly, but I mean it's a kind of a beginning. What we've kind of put together, and this little spaceship, what it's going to do, we want to move this thing into Unity. A couple things we need to do first. One, remember we talked about this. I want to go to the third tab here, right, on the right, and I want to definitely move this to metric. Okay, this is a requirement. If you don't, you may have some really weird effects when you bring them in. Number one, so metric. Two, I want to file save. This is important. Okay, so I'm going to save my files. I called the last one, I kind of made a directory on my desktop called COMP305 lesson 1. We're going to call this ship B, right? So you can call this ship A. I'm going to call this ship B, call it ship, right? So I'm going to kind of rename this thing to ship B. And save. All right, so my ship B has been saved. There it is. The great thing about Unity is that I can directly import things from Blender into Unity without doing anything else. First, we need to set up our Unity project. So let's do that now. So we've done Blender. Blender's is over. We've got our asset, whatever it is. This is the way we're going to do our asset pipeline for Blender, right? And we're going to go into Unity now. So I'm going to launch Unity. I asked you guys to download and install everything. Please log in too. You may have to log into Unity. Notice that I have a project called COMP305 F2016 Lesson 1A. I did that this morning. Let's do another one. So I'm going to do a new project. And in here, we're going to do it COMP305 Fall 2016 Lesson 1B, because you guys are the B class, right? Notice that I need to go from, I'm not changing from 3D to 2D. I'm keeping it 3D, right? I'm not changing from Enable Unity Analytics. I'm keeping it off. I'm not adding any new packages. And I'm just clicking Create Project. Again, if you don't have Unity installed on your system, please don't wait to get it installed. If you notice, mine looks like this, right? Mine looks like this layout, right? Yours may not look like this. Yours may start off looking like the default layout, like this, right? And that's fine for most cases, but I highly don't recommend that you program it this way. I'll tell you why, not in this class. My recommendation is you move some of these things around. Now, the Unity editor is very similar to what we've seen in other editors. One, for example, this area here, the hierarchy, this little panel right here, is where the outliner would have been on Blender. So Blender highlight the hierarchy and outliner, kind of the same thing. So outlines all the objects in your scene. For example, in this scene container, I have two objects, the main camera and a directional light. There's the main camera, there's the directional light. Notice that it's Y up, like I said before, Y up. There's the X coordinate and the Z coordinate. You can see how it's looking right now. I have the scene and the game. Let's move to a different kind of layout, and we'll talk about how to build this different layout. So I'm going to go from default, right, to 2x3. Let's go to 2x3 with Unity. You get kind of something like this, right? Now this is cool and all, but it's not what I'm looking for. What I really want to do is I want to move this game tab by clicking and dragging. I want to move this game tab over here into the next to the scene. Let's do that. Okay, now that I've got that, that's the first thing. So I can switch between my scene, what's actually in the scene that I'm creating, and the game, what my game preview looks like. Right now it doesn't show anything, right? All right, here I can see that I have my untitled scene, and I have my project files over here. Yeah, it's kind of good here, but I prefer to have more space for my screen and less space for this, because I don't have a lot of project files. So I'm going to take my project files and pop them under here. Oops, let's undo that. Pop them under here, my set. I'll get them eventually. There we go. Sorry, there. All right, and now when I have those project files under there, I want to push all this to the right. I also see this little, this bar right here, right? I want to kind of pull this bar to the left. So I have, it's all in a, instead of images, it's going to turn into a list, right? So this is what you have here in terms of your 2x3 layout. Okay, why? Because there's a couple things. I've got my hierarchy right here, the inspector, which is a property inspector that's going to appear here, that's context sensitive. When I left click on an object, right, I can see that the inspector is going to change according to my what object I'm clicking on, right? Now the reason why you're not seeing any objects is because you're not looking at the right thing. You need to look at scene, not game. If you click on, if you can't see the object here, you can always click on the actual object in the hierarchy, right? So for example, I'm looking at main camera, and if I want to click on the main camera, I can press the F key to do frame select mode. So kind of frame into it. I can still zoom in and out with by scrolling the wheel on my mouse. So I can kind of scroll in and out of my camera or my object that I'm selecting, right? Same thing with my directional light. I can, if I want to frame select my directional light, I can do that and scroll in and out. So I can kind of come closer to my scene. Notice that there is a grid in the background. It's kind of hard to see on the screen here, but there is a grid that exists in the background here. But I have two options. I have my main camera and my directional light. What I want to do is, in my assets, I want to create several folders that I'm going to use for my project. And I'm always going to have these folders in place. This is going to be your project structure, okay? So right-click, I want to create a new folder. And again, I right-clicked here next to my assets. So right-click on my assets, create new folder. And inside there, I want to create a folder called underscore scripts. Okay, I want to do another one. Right-click, create a new folder. And I want to do underscore scenes. Remember, scenes are the container for all other game objects. Think about a scene as a game world. Like literally, you can have hundreds of objects, even objects that are off the screen in your scene. And it's a bunch of tricks, right? I can have additional scene objects in my scene. And the reason why I'd want to have that as opposed to showing or instantiating new objects all the time is because of the processing power involved. In order for me to have a smoothly running game, I want to load as many objects as I can in the scene at once, right at the beginning, so you have a bit of a load screen. And then I'm going to have consistent gameplay. I won't have to worry about objects being loaded in later. All right, so I have scenes and scripts. Let's add one more for now. I'm going to make another one called models. So here's models. So models is a great place to put my Blender model, right? Okay, so here's my models. Double click. I'm actually in the model folder now, right? So notice that there's the breadcrumb, assets, models, right here. And here's my model. And inside here is where I want to put my Blender stuff, right? So I want to right-click inside there and go import new asset. I know I have my asset from the desktop. I have it in this folder called COMP305. You could have stored it somewhere else. And my asset is called ship B. Yours was, the other one from the first class was ship. I'm going to click import. And it's going to do its little import dance. And notice that I have a bit of a preview here. I can look at my ship, what it's going to look like in Unity, right? In the preview. Okay? And I can actually scroll around and take a look at what it looks like. All right, cool. So I've got my ship and I've got materials, but I want to kill them for a second. Okay, so I want to right-click on my material folder and delete it. Now, if I do that, I don't have any materials for my ship anymore, and I got to create my own materials. That means that I need another folder. If I click on assets, I want to add another folder. I'm going to call it the materials folder. We're going to have many other folders, right? You want to keep organized in your Unity projects. And actually, if you do any tutorial, they always talk about how being organized is important, because for us, we're making small games. For them, people who make professional games, they might have literally thousands of assets to keep track of: materials, textures, models, prefabs, scripts, you know, and you need to keep organized with all this stuff. So materials, models for now, for scenes and scripts, this is okay to start off with. What I want to do is in my materials folder, so I'm double clicking on my materials folder, I'm going to right click and create a brand new material. Here's my material. I don't have to do it this way, but I'm just going to call this material ship. Right, so I have my ship material. Now, here's my model, right? My ship model, and I want to put it into the scene. There's a couple ways to do this. I could drag and drop it into the scene, or I can drag and drop it into my hierarchy. Let's drag and drop it into the hierarchy. So I'm going to drag and drop the ship into my hierarchy like this. Notice how it becomes purple, or this other color. This means that if you see it like this, it means that there is no material. And if you look at the actual ship, the ship is derived from the game object superclass that all other game objects are created from in Unity. All right. So notice that all game objects have a transform component, right? This case, because I'm bringing in a mesh, which is my ship, I want my cube mesh filter on. My mesh renderer, I want that in, but I don't need my animator. I'm not going to do any animations. And that came right from Blender. So I'm just going to go right-click on the gear, or just left-click on the gear, and remove my component. Each component I can remove if I really want to. The one component I cannot remove is my transform component. So if I actually go in here and try and remove it, you can see that I can't. I can reset its position and rotation and do all kinds of other stuff, but I cannot remove my component. Okay? Not the transform. It belongs to every game object in a game, including empty game objects. Okay, so this is cool. I've got my ship, I've got this stuff, but it's like this. Why? Because inside my mesh renderer, if you look in here, materials, there is no material. The material is missing. So what I want to do inside the material that I created, which is the ship material, I want to drag and drop the material on top of my missing material. And now I have a material for my ship. It's quite basic. Okay, how do I move around with Unity? I can scroll in and out like I did before. If I highlight an object, like for example, my ship, I can press F to frame select again. So I can select this thing so it's in the middle of my frame, right? If I press the middle mouse, the scroll wheel, if I click it in, I can kind of move it to the right and left with my hand. You can see that the hand is there now, right? If I right click, right, I can kind of rotate around, right? If I click in the middle, I can rotate around that, right? You can see that that's happening right there. If I right click and again, depending on if I right click and I hit the Alt key, I can zoom in and out, right? So it just zooms in and out as well in a smooth way. Okay. And there's different combinations. Like for example, if I depending on how I want to move around, I could pan and zoom and do all kinds of stuff like that. The one thing to note, and I haven't a chance to do this with the class in the first class, is that these buttons up here allow me to select and move things around in the scene. Okay? Like for example, the hand key, and this one would be just like I have in Blender. I can move this physically up and down. Notice that the transform position in my component, I can physically move this up and down into the scene, right? And the same thing with my rotation. I can move this into a -90, right? So it kind of speaks to where it is, right? My scale is 1, which is good. That means I imported it, and it's kind of taking the right shape for my object. My object is pretty raw right now. There's no color, there's no texture, there's nothing. I've just imported the object straight into Unity. Okay, so I can certainly do that. I can also, if I click this, I can definitely change the shape of my object by making it flatter or thicker, you know, or wider or whatever, right? I could do that. I don't want to do that right now, so I can revert back by just changing these numbers to 1s. So change the scale back to 1, right? So I could do that. I have full control, and these objects here do that, right? Now, again, I want to show you this because if you think about this, this is the first key, the second key, the third key, the fourth key, and the fifth key. Well, how do they relate? Q, right? W will be the next one. So if I click the W key, right? The E key, the R key, and the T key. All those keys are the same. So Q, W, E, R, T, right? And so the core part of your keyboard is where these are, how these are aligned. By the way, these are the exact same keys that we would use in Maya for a lot of the stuff. Same kind of keys. Right, so if you're using Maya, Q, W, E, R, T, same. You should probably know those things in terms of the way we select things. Again, hand select mode just moves the entire scene around. That's all it's doing, right? So I can move it around so I can take a look at the scene. But I want to move things around physically, then I got to move them like this, right? I can also move them numerically in the scene. Okay. What do I see in my game? Do I actually see my ship? I see the back of my ship. Meh, that doesn't look any good. So what do I want to do? I want to click on my camera. So I want to kind of click my camera. Notice I get a little bit of a preview down here, right? And what I want to do is I can move my camera closer. The closer I move my camera to my ship, even though my camera looks like it's pointing this way, it's actually looking right at me. And if I was to rotate around the camera, right, you can see that the lines that the camera is showing, that is the line, the viewable lines that I have, right? That's important to understand. So those are my viewable lines. Again, if I want to rotate around, I can certainly do that. Right. So again, move it around a little bit more. And I'm not changing the camera itself. All I'm doing is moving what the ship is looking like. So right, see the camera as it gets closer to the ship, you can see that in the preview it's seeming to be closer. But I want to make it so that the camera's over here, right? So how do I do that? Well, I can move the camera to the right, right? And I can rotate the camera by pressing the this rotation button right here, right? So I can rotate the camera. And I can, if you notice, as I rotate the camera, the whole view of the camera changes. There we go. Right, so there's the camera view. Go back to this alignment, and I can kind of bring the camera closer, and I can align it so I can see the side of my ship more. And if I look at my game now, my game window, I can see that that is what the camera is looking at. If I want to see from the top more, I can kind of pull it down, right? And I can see a preview of what my ship is going to be looking like there, right? So I can kind of position my object so it's in the scene. I can also rotate my camera so it looks a little down. Like right now it's looking straight ahead. So I can click rotation and then click the red arrow to rotate the camera so it looks kind of down at the ship a little bit more. And then move it in a little bit closer. All right, so I got my ship kind of centered in the scene, right? And I've got this skybox that's in the background. That's what this skybox is looking at. I can turn the skybox off. For now, let's leave it on. But right now, that's what you're looking at. You're looking at the scene, and the camera is just looking at the ship model, okay? Great. I want to save my scene. So I want to go File, Save Scene. And it's going to ask me, where do I want it? Well, I have a Scenes folder, so I'm going to put it in there. Double click. And I'm going to call this scene Main. Save. So there's my scene is now saved as the main scene, right? I also want to save my project. So I'm going to save my project just to make sure that I've got everything saved up. Now, remember what I talked about before. There's going to be two parts. One part that's going to go on GitHub, and I'm going to be talking about GitHub more over the coming weeks. One part that's going to go up on GitHub. That part's going to be just your code. But I don't want to put everything up on GitHub. I want to keep your builds and maybe some of your assets out of GitHub because it's just too big. It's massive, right? And all I really care about is looking at your code. If I want to look at your code for a documentation perspective or whatever, I can inspect it up online. But what I want when I test your code is when you upload things on eCentennial, I just want your final build. So I want your code on GitHub and your final build on eCentennial. It's a little bit different than what we've been doing in other courses. Why? Because your final build can be huge, right? And I don't want to make it so it's combined. And also your assets on GitHub could like be a terabyte, right? I don't want a terabyte up on eCentennial. That doesn't make any sense, right? So we got to be really careful about that. Okay, how do we do this? So I want to go into File. I want to go into Build and Run. Okay, now I don't know for you guys. Did you guys do a build and run before? You guys did all that, right? Good. So I want to go to Build and Run. Now, remember, I asked you guys to download everything. If you didn't download everything, at the very minimum, I want you to download your WebGL. All right? WebGL is the way I'm going to look at everything because I can double-click and look at it, and there's your game, and it'll run in the web. So when you test your game out, make sure it works for WebGL. Okay, if it doesn't work for WebGL, and test it frequently, please. Don't like pile stuff in there and then you're like, but it works on my computer, Tom, but it doesn't work on WebGL. Well, then it won't work for me, right? And it's going to be massive, chances are. And that's why it's not working. We want to keep the games fairly simple. All right, so here's my WebGL, right? I want to use this build. And if you notice, I want to click on Build and Run. I don't have a scene here, but it's going to take, there's only one scene, so it's going to attach the scene, the default scene, into the game. So I'm going to click Build and Run. Okay, here we go. Now, it's going to take me to my folder for my solution, right? This is my project folder. And if you notice, there is no place to put it. I want to create a new folder. You can do this on Windows as well, right? Where I want to call it Builds. There's my Builds folder. inside my builds, I want to make this thing, I want to call this thing WebGL, right? You can call it whatever you like. This is the build that I'm going to make, a WebGL build, and click Save. All right, stand back and relax because it's going to take time. All right, and the reason why it takes so much time, if you notice, it says stripping, it's converting managed assemblies to C++. It's doing its conversion. What it's doing is it's taking Unity, the whole Unity object, the scene, all the game objects in the scene, the positions, the the rotation, the location, the scale, all that stuff, converting them to C++ assemblies, and then after that, converting it back to JavaScript, right? Because it's got to be compatible with the web, right? So it's going to take some time. Now I have an i7, right, with 16 gigs of RAM, right? So my machine's not, slowpoke. I also have 1 terabyte SSD, right, on my machine. Okay, I'm just telling you, right? So, it's taking time. So on an exam, please don't wait to do this the minute before it's due, right? We won't have time. This takes several minutes. So if I call it on an exam, if I say, okay, your time's done, and you're like, hold on, we have like 50 minutes left. Yeah, you're not done. You got to do this, right? So your build time, your development time might be done, but then you got to sit there and put things together so you can build out, oh, here we go, native compiled to JS, as I'm still talking, right? And my fan is going, right? Which means, I'm using my CPU and my GPU and all kinds of stuff to make things go, right? For you, if you have a slower machine, or if you're using the school machine, and I'm timing it with you, right? Let's see who finishes faster, right? It might take a bit long, right? I'm telling you this in advance so you understand what's required, right? And this is only part one of our stuff. And what do we have? We have one model, a simple model from Blender with not that many vertices and pretty low polygon, if you ask me, right? So, I mean, this is kind of crazy that it's taken so long, you might think. But it is what it is, right? I'm not saying to go away and do it. It's just that there's rendering time involved. Okay, mine's done. All right. So I'm here I'm using Chrome and I'm up. Okay, you guys are still going, right? So here's the thing that I'm seeing now in Chrome, right? I'm seeing that I've got my model, right? And on the bottom, I see that I've got my WebGL. Here's the name of my project. This is what I want to see from you guys too. That's why it's very important. I can also go full screen if I want, right? So that's what it looks like in full screen. And this is purely on the web, right? Which is kind of neat, right? This is nice. It's great. Did it finally finish for you guys? No? Oh, for you it did? Are you using your laptop or the machine in front of you? Oh, school machine. Okay. Oh, it looks like it's just finishing for you too. All right. Anyways, the reason why I showed you this is because for the simplest build, it's done. Let me just save this project now. So I'm going to say, that's cool. I'm done my build. I'm going to file, save scene, file, save project, just to be sure. And I'm going to close Unity off. Unity, bye-bye. Let's take a look at Unity. And I want to look at the file size and everything else. I think it's important for you to understand this, right? Oh, yeah, you're not looking at anything. Remember I told you have to position your camera? All right. One other thing to do is make sure you save everything, before you do your build. That would be very bad if you got everything going, your game is working, but you never saved anything. And when you go back, your scene is destroyed, right? That would be very bad too. So before you build anything, because it takes resources, sometimes things crash, make sure you save, right? It's really, really important. In fact, if anything, upload to GitHub before you do your build. All right, we'll talk about that a bunch of times. Okay, on my desktop, I have a Unity build, a Unity projects folder. Under there, I have 2 projects now, one from this morning and one from today. Let's right-click and see the size of my project. So my whole project right now is 31 megs, right? It's pretty darn big, right? Okay, cool. Now, what I want to do in my B project is, here I am, my B project. I want to upload this to GitHub, right? That's what I want to do. So I'm going to bring up my terminal. I'm going to show you guys how to do this, not this week, but probably the following weeks. If you know how to do this, that's great, right? If you're using a PC, I'm going to build it on a PC as well. I'll have my external 1 terabyte SSD that I've got a PC built on, right? I'll launch it. Well, yeah, I know. I have resources. And then we'll launch it. I'll make it work on PC, right? And then you'll see we'll do the exact same kind of deal. and I'll use command prompt instead of terminal on the Mac. It's very similar, all right? In fact, you can also use the desktop tool that comes with GitHub if you really don't want to use terminal or command prompt. It's up to you. But there is no GitHub integration with Unity, not yet. I know they're thinking about putting some kind of other integration. They do have version control integration, but it's not GitHub. It's Perforce, I think, is what they use. Okay. Now, if I want to, kind of go into that, I could, manually go into it, or I could just drag and drop. So I'm going to look into lesson B. I'm drag and dropping in there. Same thing with Windows, by the way. You can drag and drop again into your folder. All right. Now that I've done that, I'm going to go git init, which is going to initialize my Git repository. Right. There's my master repo. Right. Now this is repository that I talked about. Remember, is a snapshot of my files. Right. And if I do an ls command, there it is, then I can see that there's a hidden .git folder that's sitting inside my project files, right? The .git folder is where all the project changes are happening. It actually keeps track of all my snapshots inside my folder. And all I've done right now is do a git init, which initializes my Git repository locally, right? That's what it does. Okay, let's clear the screen. Now what I want to do is I want to say git add. I want to add stuff to the repository. I want to add dot. Dot means add everything, right? Git add dot, right? And this is going to take all the files, including my assets and my builds, because I want to share this with you for the first time. It's only 30 megs. So I'm going to put it up on GitHub for you. So if you want to download it later, my files, and check it out. I want you to do this. This is your homework for today. Go home, download my files from GitHub, install it into Blender. You're going to have that access. Install it into Unity, see how it works. And do my files work for you on Unity? Can you double click on my index.html and make my things work? Okay, I want you to check this out. All right. Now after I have git add dot, I'm going to say git commit. I'm creating a snapshot, right, for my files. -m for message, and I'm going to name the snapshot initial commit. Okay, so this is my initial commit. Yeah. So what this does is it adds everything that I have, all my files and folders, because I haven't included a git ignore file. My git ignore file, what it can do is you can specify folders that you don't want to upload to Git, or you don't want to include in your repository, right? Like the assets folder or the build folder or anything else, all right? All right, so this is what I'm putting up there. Now I've got my initial commit. I've got everything. If I do a git log, I can see that I have one commit, right? That's local for me. My git status, right? I can see that I'm on branch master, on the master branch, and I have nothing to commit. I've got a working tree that's clean. All right, so I'm ready to go. I'm ready to upload things to GitHub. GitHub is the remote service on the cloud that I'm gonna take my local repository and I push everything to the cloud, right? So in order for me to do that, I need to go into GitHub, right? And I want to go into my Centennial College account, right? And I want to create a new repository. Right, Centennial College, which I'm going to call it the same as what I have here, COMP305, fall 2016. Oh, fall 2016, and it's going to be lesson 1B, right? So we can have that and press enter. And what this is going to do, it's going to create a repository here. The great thing is that GitHub gives you instructions on what to do, right? So you can do this at the command line, whether it's on Mac or PC or Linux, doesn't matter. Tells you exactly what to do to set it up. If you want to set up a repository in GitHub, all the instructions are right here, right? I want to take these last two lines, right? And I'm going to copy them, Control-C or Command-C on the Mac. And I'm going to come in here and I'm going to paste them, Control-V or Command-V on the Mac, right? And then press enter. Now, in order for this to work the way it's working, you have to have Git installed on your machine, right? If your Git's not installed on your machine, or if on your machine you can't access Git, like if you type in Git and you get some unrecognized command, right? On the PC, it's because Git hasn't been installed properly. And you need to install Git properly. There's a couple ways to get Git before we continue. But right now, we'll just go into this, refresh. You can see that all my assets are up online now. So even my WebGL build, it's in there, right? So you can actually go in there and grab everything. And if you go to Centennial College / so GitHub, Centennial College, COMP305, fall 2016, lesson 1B, you can currently go in there. So your homework is download this thing and see if you can get access to all this stuff, like download and clone. You can actually click clone or download here, and you can grab stuff from my repository. Okay, so what happens if you don't have Git working properly on your machine, like a PC? This is another tool you have to make sure that works. And the way to do that is there's two places. I can download the GitHub tool. There's actually a tool that comes with, from Git. It's called desktop.github.com. And depending on the type of machine you have, whether it's PC, Mac, there's not a Linux version, unfortunately, for this one, right? What you can do is you can download this desktop version. It gives you this tool that actually has, you can do a lot of the stuff that we just did with a UI, like some kind of graphic user interface, as opposed to the command line, like how I was doing it. So if you really don't like to do command line, although I have to tell you, you should learn how to do it, right? You want to download stuff for either Windows or Mac. Like this one is, I believe the Windows version is this one. The other one was the Mac version, right? So there's two versions that are available for you. They're very similar, all right? The tools are very similar. The other thing you may want to need to do is download Git. So if I go download Git itself, there is a place to go, git-scm.com/downloads, and it's available across platform in this particular case. What you'll do is you'll download the latest version of Git, and it'll install properly on your system. I highly recommend you do this to your systems first, because we're going to be using Git throughout the entire semester, right? This is not the first and only time we're going to do it, right? So I would start here, actually. The Git desktop tool is a cool little tool. Yes, it's nice, but if your Windows machine is not functional, get Git, all right? If you have trouble with Git, please see me next week, right, when we start off the class. And what I'll do is I'll make sure that everybody has Git accessible on their laptops. You should have access to Git on your desktop, on your machine in front of you. Why don't you check it out now to make sure? If you don't have Git, I'm going to make sure it's installed because we need to update the profile, the files anyway, because a texture packer is not working. So check it out and see if Git's working. So go to your command line tool, and then from your command line tool, you can go to Windows command prompts. If you type in CMD, and see if you can type Git by itself. It works, right? So that's a good thing. That means you have on the machines in front of you, worst case scenario, you have the ability to connect to Git and do what I just did, all the things I just did. The biggest problem is when you install this at home, you may not, because sometimes you need to change your environment variables on the machine in order for Git to be installed properly. But I highly recommend this. Go here to this site, git-scm.com, make sure it's installed properly. All right, cool. This is good. I've got it up and running and everything else. I've got Git going. Let's test if I can look at the build in Chrome by double-clicking. Maybe that's possible. Of course, the answer is not, right? Let me just show you anyway. So I'm going to go into Lesson 1B. I'm going to go into Builds. Notice I have WebGL, right? And if I double-click on my index.html, I'm going to pull up my default resource, which is Chrome, and it's going to say, meh, I'm sorry, you can't download and use this thing. However, it will work with Firefox and Safari. So I'm going to right-click, and I'm going to open up with Firefox. Why? Chrome has some really weird security settings. Oh yeah, that's good. I like it. Chrome has some really weird security settings that stop you from doing it. Why did it launch Chrome again? Let's try that again. What did I do? I said open it up with Firefox. Did I choose the wrong thing? No, I think I did the right thing. There we go. Here's Firefox. Oh, video helper for Unity. Oh, there it is. Okay, and there's my ship. All right, so you can see that it works in Firefox even without the server that is generated from Unity. Unity actually creates a little server, so you can make this work. If we were going to inspect the files a little bit to understand what's happening, you cannot just give me the index.html. Please do not do that. That is not a complete project for me. All right, some people have, okay, Tom, you got my index.html. The index.html file is 1K, right? That's not what I need. These releases, the release itself, if I go into get info, right, is like another 3 meg. All right, that's where all the files are, right here. And I would give me this whole folder. Please give me the whole WebGL folder that you create. And therefore, there's no issues. I'm going to be able to launch it if you give me if it works for you, it'll work for me, right? So go into Builds, go into WebGL, and if you notice under the release, you have a bunch of other stuff. For example, I have a 2.4 megabyte JSGZ. This is a gzipped version of my WebGL build. It's C++ converted to JavaScript that works, right? Please do not check, do not delete this thing. This is a required file, right? You can, seriously though, you can take this whole thing. Notice that there's a favicon and a full bar. Yeah, I can certainly go into my index.html and modify it. If you're a web person, I can make it so that my Unity program will run inside of a browser, but you need a server for it to run, right? The other thing you need to do is understand a couple things. When you're running your WebGL build, it's using the web as a wrapper to display your game. It's not a JavaScript game. Okay, that's a different thing altogether. It's still a Unity game on the back end, right? But it's a JavaScript game on the front end, right? So just know that that's happening, all right? So those are important things to know about the build. So these are the requirements. The requirements are for you guys, if you think about it, right? You do your pipeline. Again, when you're building your assets, first you're going to do your blueprint, your game design document, which we're going to talk about separately, right? And I'm going to give you a template, which I've given some of you before, right? And we're going to build it in a little lab to go through to make sure you understand what's required for your game design document. Then you're going to build your assets, right? You're going to add your assets in, or you can get them. And Unity has a beautiful asset store. And again, some people like the asset store and some people hate the asset store. I know some people are like, they should never have an asset store because then people can just build stuff. I know Pedro from the first class, he hates the asset store because people put things on Steam and it's just your final project that they just dump on Steam and they sell for like 15 bucks. That's what he was saying, right? Yeah, you might say happy, but it's really an incomplete game, right? It's like they're putting a prototype online and it's not really a full game, and they're charging for it. Look, if you put up your game, your final project from today's class, from this class, and charge 99 cents, okay. I mean, if someone wants to preview your game and do that, even that's a lot, right? Really, it should be free. Put it up, make it free, let them download it, get your stuff known as a developer. That's pretty cool, right? But Steam, you could put it up on Steam. They will accept it. Will you be able to put it up on the App Store or anywhere else? Chances are not, right? Not because of anything else, because there's a lot more involved in creating a mobile game than there is in creating something that goes on Steam. You won't be able to build on an Xbox. You won't be able to build on a PS4 or a PS Vita or something else like that because we don't have the licenses from Sony or Microsoft to do so. Not because Unity won't do it. It has. I think it's going to like 20 builds right now, right? So the reason why we're doing WebGL is because for me, I can actually mark it easier. Double click, open it up. There's your game. Play the game. Done. Right? There's nothing much to it. Right? It's a prototype. Right? Okay. So this is the first thing that we have to know. So GitHub is something that we're going to be using all the time. Let's take a look at a couple of other aspects of this thing, right? Because we're talking about the entire package, the whole pipeline. So again, we've talked about this. We've put it up in Blender or Maya. And again, if you wanted to understand the complexities between or the differences between Maya and Blender, they're quite different. And I'll tell you right now, the processing power involved in Maya is huge compared to Blender. It's mega. It's big, right? It's very similar. Like if I want to build a surface, an object, as an example, you see that I've got polygons. I can certainly build the same kind of object by clicking onto it, right? And then I've got the same opportunities. Again, notice on the left in Maya, there's very similar tool sets. The rotate tool tells you what it is. The scale tool, I want to click the scale tool. Notice again that you've got your Y up, right, in Maya, compared to how we did it in Blender. Again, if I want to increase an object, in size or whatever, it's something that I can do, and I can certainly modify it. There's no difference between modeling mode and object mode in Maya. It's all one, right? So I can still rotate, look at the same idea that we learned in Blender or in Unity. It's the same thing here in Maya, right? You're not doing anything that drastic that you couldn't use the tool to model or shape things with, and you could export from Maya into Unity, no problem. It's actually there's an established path. It actually takes a Maya file, right? So it's pretty cool. Although the established way to do it is an FBX file. That's what you want to do, right? And there's several additional settings. So you could decide that Maya is the tool that you want to use for your game pipeline. We talked about this earlier today what I recommend that you do is pick up some other tools like tutorials. If you're going to use Maya, or if you're going to do, look at this. It took time to download it. Or if you're going to use 3D Studio Max or something else, I can't teach all those tools. There's like, it's tools to die for. This could be just a tools course after that. It won't build anything. We'll just do tools, right? In order for you to use the tools of choice, again, you certainly could do some of those things. However, I can't teach it all. I have to talk about Fireworks because I'm going to be using that. I'm talking about Blender because I'm going to be using that. I'm going to talk about Unity because I'm going to be using that. And chances are Visual Studio and or MonoDevelop because I'm going to be using those, right? But I can't talk about all of them. So you need to do some of your own learning. When it comes to Fireworks, and again, I'm just going to talk about a tool set here for a second, and this last part of the day, right? If I click on Fireworks, right? Again, I have Fireworks. It says CS6, but really this is part of the Adobe Creative Cloud suite, right? It creates some really cool graphics. So PNG objects, JPEGs, even SVGs. If I go File, New, I can certainly create an object of a certain type. Think about this as a bitmap that I want to create. So let's say, for example, I want to make a bitmap that's 100 pixels by 100 pixels. I can do that by specifying how large my bitmap is, right? I want to make the background transparent, right? Here I go, in place, and there's my bitmap. Now it's kind of ugly, right? But what if I want to use my ship from Blender, and I want to import it as an image in Fireworks? Okay, let's do that. So how do we do that kind of stuff? Again, this is kind of enrichment class 101, right? On how to do this, right? You guys have extra time because the B class has extra time. I did my rehearsal in the A class, so now I got this is all extra. They didn't get this in the A class. I'm sorry, A class. It's not because I didn't want to give it to you. I just didn't have time, even with the technical difficulties, right? And I ate lunch, right? So what I want to do here is I want to go to desktop where I have my stuff. In COMP305, I have, in lesson 1, I have a couple ships. I want to go to ship B because it's the one I want. I want to launch Blender again. So the great thing about Blender is once you've developed your object, you have the ability to render the object. Now the rendering of the object, if I click render, it's going to render it in wherever my camera is. Right now, the rendering, it looks pretty bad, right? Because my camera is looking at it from this corner right here. So how do I move the camera in Blender so it's looking at it the way I want it? If I want to make it a 2D, I want to take a 3D object and create a 2D PNG file. How do I do that? So escape. What I want to do is, first of all, change the where the camera is. But the first thing I want to do is change what the object looks like on my screen, like where the perspective is. So I'm going to click the, so let me change up my wake. I'm going to wake up my keyboard here for a second. There it is. So I want to change my perspective to the top because I want to make it so that it looks like a 2D object, right? I want to zoom out. And what I want to do, I'm going to keep it in perspective mode here. And I want to put my camera here, right? So where I'm looking at it. And instead of me moving it manually, and this is the key, I want to use my view to align my active camera to view. I don't know if you guys did this, but on the intro to simulation thing. But here's what I want to do with the intro to the camera. So I'm going to go to view. I'm going to go align view, align active camera to view, right? Now my camera is here, right? I want to click in my N on my transform bar, right? Notice that I have this option called lock camera to view. What I can do is I'm actually, as I scroll out now, my camera will lock itself to the view. So it'll actually position itself back, like physically from the scene. So I'm going to kind of zoom out, right? So this is the look and feel of what my ship is going to look like. Now, it looks pretty ugly from this perspective, but hey, it's a pretty ugly looking ship as it is, right? Okay, and if I want to balance how the camera is going to look, so let's say I want to put the ship here like this in the middle of the screen, I can do that. I want to uncheck this now after I've positioned the camera, and then I want to kind of zoom back out. Okay, good. So this is what my ship is going to look like. If I click the render button now, notice that my ship is exactly what it looks like, just like this. So this is my ship with the shadows and everything else. If I want to change my shadows and add shadows from the side or from one side or the other side, I can totally do that. So I can use Blender to create my image. Now there's a couple ways I could capture my image now. I could capture it by doing a screen capture. Bam, screen capture, I've got my image. Well, that's kind of cheesy. I'd rather use the tool to do it for me. Notice I have on the right, I'm going to take away this bar here, right? On the right, I have the first button is the render button. I have render, right? And it renders the image, right? Down here on the left, I have image, right? And what I could do is, what I want to save all my images, save as an image right here. This save as image will save it with whatever I want. So I've taken my image with the shadows and everything. And this is why I told you guys, if you actually create your image properly, the one that you're going to use for your game, you can actually use Blender to create your assets for your 2D stuff, no problem, right? So what I can do is I can go image, right? Save as image. It's going to tell me where I want it. It's going to make it a PNG, right? And I want to put it inside my COMP305 lesson 1 folder. And let's just call it ship.png, ship B actually. Make it ship B, ship B-.png, and click Save as Image. I've done it. It says I'm done. Let's see what I've got in my thing. So here it is. Here's my ship B PNG. If I double click now, it'll come up here, right, inside my fireworks display, right? Now there's a couple problems. What are the problems that you can possibly see? One, the background's not transparent. I could remove the background, and I can do that by using the my tool here, right? Select everything. But you see that some parts of it, if you notice, are going to be selected as well. I've got to change the tolerance so it's really low, so I don't select stuff I don't want. If I press delete now, I can delete the background, so there is no background, just this ship. If I zoom in, you can see that I've got a bit of an edge to it, right? I may not want that, and I can go in there, and later on, as we talk about creation tools, we'll go back in there and soften that up a little bit and make it so it's a little bit nicer than this. It's pretty darn ugly right now, okay? How to fix this ahead of time? We know we're going to export. If we know we're going to export, there's a couple things we can do to fix this problem, so we don't have this problem now. I'm doing a lot of work, post-production work, which can be handled in Blender, right? Let's do it again. One more thing in Blender. So I'm going to kill this ship B. Don't save. And I'm going to kill this as well. I'm going to go back to Blender for a second. And here's Blender. Remember, this is the rendered image, right? If I press Escape, it's going to show me the background image. And if I zoom out, I can actually put a background plane that's white, okay, on the bottom. Why? White and gray, I have my edges nicely, or black, one of the two, something that that's a contrast to what I'm doing here. Even green. And that's totally different than what I'm using, all right? So let's do that. So I'm going to press Shift S, which can allow me to move my cursor to the center. Don't worry if you don't remember this, right? And then Shift A, and then I'm add a plane. So here's my plane. I'm going to expand my plane by pressing the S key, right? And I better undo that because I'm doing it in edit mode. All right, let's go back to object mode. So Shift A, add a plane, and then press the S key and expand that plane so it fills up the background, right? It's underneath the plane, the ship that I have, you see? So it's underneath, right? And what I want to do is gray. Gray on gray, not going to work for me. I need to make this another color. Colors in Blender, or colors in Unity, or colors in Maya are an effect of a material. Think about the material that's something that wraps around my object. I have my bare bones mesh, and when I add a material, I wrap it around the bare bones, the skeleton of my object. And that material can have texture, and that material can have color, and that material can have reflectivity, right? That material can have metallic, a kind of metallic feel to it. There's all kinds of things it can have. To add the material, I need to go to this little button here, the third one from the right. Actually, the fourth one from the right, circle. Right now, if you notice, there is no material in here. I got to click the new button. And I'm going to just make this, so the material, notice how it fades into the background. The material for this one is going to be called the background. I can call this whatever I like. Right? Here's my background material. I can also rename the object in my view. I could call the background, instead of plane and cube, I could call this background, and I can call this ship. Right, there's my ship and my background. It's like literally like an outliner. Okay, that's why Blender is such a great tool for what we need, right? Okay, so my material is really ugly. I can make my material a different color. The diffuse property of my material, using a Lambert shader, right? My diffuse property of my material, I can change it to whatever I want. I have a color wheel, and I want to change it to something that's a little odd, like green, if I was going to target my ship, right? If I don't want my ship material to have anything, like I want to make my ship green, I can certainly do that. And it'll have colors based on the light that's in the room, right? But let me undo that. So again, I want to remove the material, right? Enough so that way I can even, depending on what I'm clicking on, let me just go back. So I'm going to rename this thing as a ship. What I want to do is I want to go back to the background, which I really wanted to, and that's where I want to add the material change. So the material, instead of diffuse, I'm going to go into like some kind of weird color on the background. Something that's like stark contrast to this piece. Why? Because I can cut it out easier, right? I'm going to cut it out eventually. Here's the other thing. I could make it black or white. White might be a good choice because of the way my material is, but because my actual object is gray, it might fade in. I might lose the edges of my object. Whereas green might be a good color, or mauve, or some kind of weird other color, right? Okay, cool. Let's go back to the top, right? I'm going to zoom into my camera, right? This is my camera view. And when I render the object now, I can render it. Here's my render. Now I've got a bit of a problem. I've got a shadow, right? Because the shadow is going to appear because there is a background plane, right? Now my plane, I can choose whether it receives shadows or not, right? I can choose that my plane does not receive shadows if I really want to. Let's undo. And also I've got a bit of what looks like reflectivity on my plane, right? Because of the light. Let's go back. So I'm talking about problems here because you're going to have to deal with these things too, right? So I'm right-clicking on my plane, and again, if I click on the material, notice that I have a diffuse shader, but I also have specularity, which is what we call reflectivity, right? All right, so it's like a reflective nature, how metallic an object is, and so on. And there's different shaders that we can use to change the reflectivity, how it works. I'm gonna kind of go one of these. Cool. Other things to note is if I go down to shading, right, and options, and where it says use mist and shadow, right, it says it receives shadow. I want to click off this. I want to click off this. I want to click off this. So it doesn't do any kind of shadows whatsoever, right? It doesn't receive or cast shadows. There's no reflectivity, right? It's fully matte, right? So so non-reflective surface. It's a green. I think I'm better off now. Let's take a look. So I'm back to this. Notice how it's changed the color. So I made it a pure color of what I had. If you want to match with my colors, by the way, these are my colors. Look at the RGB values. You can actually type them in there if you really want to. Or if you don't like these values, you want to go into hue, saturation, you can do it that way, or hexadecimal values. You can do it that way. So if you're matching something with the web, if you're actually using Blender to create something that you're going to put on the web, you can use hexadecimal values as well to match up the colors of the website. All right. Okay, so I've got this, and I want to go back into render mode, right? So I want to render, and I can see now that I've got some other problems. I've got more light here and less light there. What's the other thing I can do? I can make it so that my material on the background is self-illuminating, right? Let's do that. So escape. I got my material, and again, I'm still clicking on the same thing. And if you notice, when it comes to light, right, for my material, here's my material. My shade, I can click on shadeless. Shadeless will make the material completely self-illuminating, right? So shadeless is the way to go. Lots of little, like I said, when I talked to you earlier, Blender is like flying a plane, right? Like literally there's thousands of switches and you don't know where they all are. And you need to know these things, or else what's going to end up happening is you're going to spend your time trying to figure them out. You can certainly Google it, right? I'll tell you right now, this is one thing to do. Or when you watch my videos, take note. Like this is part of the things we're going to do is we're going to show you, I'm going to demo it, right? And then later on, you're going to see that there's going to be a chance that you're going to and be able to practice it. Okay, so let me go through this again and render. Now, if you notice, it's perfect, right? There is no additional lighting anywhere else. It's completely shadeless, and I can cut it out. There's severe edges here. There's tight edges here that I can use, and I can go to Image, and then Save as Image, and I can click on that Ship B again, even if it gives me this red mark says, hey, you already got Ship B. I want to save it anyway. All right, so if I go back and go to Ship B, notice I can already see a preview, so it's going to look okay. And now if I go and take get rid of it, it should be able to get rid of all the background without anything left over. And if you do have anything left over, I can change the tolerance, right? Sometimes what happens is, we put the tolerance a little bit too low. Like for example, see that there's this green part around. That's why I made it green, so we can see that there's some stuff that needs to come away, right? Let's undo. Okay, and what we want to try and do here again is, when we use our magic wand tool, is see the edge is hard, right? You can also anti-alias and feather, right? Again, I want to remove my tolerance. I want to put my tolerance way down, like to 1. Right? Now you're going to say, why 1? Because 1 means that there's no tolerance. 100 means 100% tolerance. It'll take everything, right? So now my tolerance level is really low. It means I should only get stuff, and I'm getting a hard edge for everything that's not green. Okay? And now if I press delete, let's see if I get it. I think it's still not as good. It's a little bit of work to do, but again, I want to make sure that we are as good as can be. And I'm pressing the control key here to zoom in with my zoom function. I can't just zoom. This just moves it up and down, right? So if I'm pressing, I'm going to go in there. Actually, that's a little worse, right? Look how rough that is, right? So I want a little bit of tolerance, but I want to get rid of all this hard edge. There are other ways of doing it, right? But I'm showing you also how you can see how fuzzy this is as well. Why is it fuzzy? Because Blender made it so. If you notice the Blender, our resolution is 920 by 1080, and we're at 50%, right? So I could make this at 100% from a resolution. And also, depending on what I want to do, I can change my presets, right? So I can go from that to, like, let's say 1080p if I really want to, right? Which would really drive everything a lot higher in terms of my percentage. If I want to do a movie, I can change my frame rate from 30 to 60 frames per second, and Blender will make a movie for me as well. This is really great when you're doing an animation for a ship. An example of this would be blinking lights on a ship or something like that. I can make it so that the Blender will do the blinking lights for me. It's all tricks, right, at the end of the day. And each image of the ship that I'm going to be taking is going to be like this, right? I'm going to take the images and put them inside of a sprite sheet, and I'm going to move from one image to the other. And as I move from one image to the other, it's going to seem that the ship is blinking, or whatever I'm going to do. It's really neat what you can do with the tools that you have. All right, let's do this one more time. So enough hard edges, again, like what I've done. It's kind of a pattern. To be safe, if you're really not happy with this, you could always make it white. White isn't as bad. You're going to see this white outline, though, which I don't really like. Green, I can identify, and I can go down and do some modifications by hand if I have to. If my magic wand tool doesn't take into effect, I can go through things pixel by pixel and get rid of it all if I really want to. Whereas white is really hard to define. It's hard to find the white, right? Let's try this again. So here, I'm going to save as image, and this thing. Now, I have it open here. Before I do that, I'm going to just kill it. Else it won't save. All right, and then let's try it one more time. Sorry, guys, I know this is like watching paint peel, but I want to show you the process so that you guys can see it, right? Again, you can see that I've got a really good image here, much better than before. It's high resolution, 960 by 540, right? For the size that I'm using. I may not even use it that big. My final image might be only 100 pixels, right? Because I'm going to put it into the scene. I can scale it and do everything on the scene much better, right? I do have a bit of interest on it in terms of the way I've positioned it. I could have also made it as a 3/4 down, so I'm getting a shadow from the side and so on. I could have made it a 3-dimensional image, but for now it's enough. Okay, let's try this thing again. So again, my hard edge. If I don't want to do feather or anti-alias, that's for sure. My tolerance is 1, which should really work. It just seems to be the image, the way the image is. It's hard for it to find this thing. So I could use this thing here. And if I was to zoom in to find out how good it is, you can see what's being cut and what's being left over, right? As I zoom in, there we go. As I zoom in, same kind of controls in terms of zooming and moving. So I'm using the Shift key and to kind of go to the right, and you can see that. Look at all this, crazy, right? If I change my tolerance, I can change my tolerance where I'm doing that. So if I go like to 20, you can see that it goes a little tighter. Maybe that's a better value, and maybe even go tighter. Let's go 30. I don't want to go too tight because the tighter I go, it'll go over the ship too. Let's go to 60. the best you can get. So that's going to be the best I can get. I'm going to get a bit of a green tinge to it, right, at this point. If I want to go really closer, I could do it. There we go. Okay, now let's delete. That's probably going to be the best I can get. There's some areas there that are not so good, and it's because it's not aligned properly. But if I was going to be seeing how this works, yeah, even on this side especially, sorry, I'm a perfectionist. I can't bear with it. What was that? It won't do the cutting. Like what I have to do here is physically do a different tool. Instead of using the wand tool, I have to use this tool. What this tool allows me to do is cut sharp edges, right? So if I deselect all, instead of using the magic wand tool, right, what I could do, and this is more of a pain in the ass, but this is the kind of work we have to do when we make our own stuff, right? Especially when we use different tools, tool sets, right? What I want to do is come in as close as I can to the ship, right? Start off at the top, up here, and do a sharp cut. So what I want to do is take this tool, this is the Polygon Lasso tool, right? And start by going one of these. So start to the top, and then what I want to do is I want to scroll to the bottom where I see the cut, right? And of course, didn't work. Let's undo that again. No, you know why? Because it's the tool, right? So I got to go here to here. And I got to be very careful, guys, because some of these tools aren't perfect. They're still buggy, even if it's the 5th iteration of the 6th iteration, right? Even if I do one of these, I got to be very careful. See how I lost it just now? Big image, right? So what I want to do is I want to kind of put this in place. I want to kind of put it as large as I can without messing things up, and then we'll stop for the day after this, okay? I do apologize. Yes. I can sharpen it too. That might do it as well. I don't mind doing that. You can just change the filter and just do a sharpen, right? Go to this filter. Sharpen. I might do it. That might do it actually. Yeah. Let's try it out. Thank you for your suggestion. So see that now. That's not bad. I'm just worried about this part. This part's where it's really messed up. See this? I could, or I can actually add more to it or less. Again, I'm being a stickler for how I want it to look, right? And I've got a very high tolerance right now, which is negative, right? I could now go through it and pixel by pixel cut it away, or I could use the tool again, right? Let's leave it as is for today. It would take me another half an hour to do properly. I'll go through pixel by pixel, I'll cut out the grain, and there would be no more green. It would be a perfect object, right? And once I have my first one, I could stamp that one on top of the other ones, right? Even if they're the exact, even if there's blinking lights and stuff like that, I can stamp that up on top, underneath them all, and it would be fine. There'd be no issues. Or I can create a hard edge. Another thing to do is, it's me, Blender, right? I can make it so that each edge is a different color, right, in Blender, because I can assign different materials to different mesh, the different parts of the mesh, to create a harder edge, like a black, right, or something else. Get so that it's more illuminated, or change the lighting. There's other tricks that you can do too to do this whole thing. Okay, so I've got this thing. Let me just zoom out, and I want to use this thing. Obviously, I can't use it like this. Let's suppose that everything is clear. I want to use my crop tool to crop as close as I can, and then I want to zoom in, right, and keep cropping so that I have as close to the tool, as close to the object as I can. Now, you notice how I'm not getting everything, right? But this is really important to do because you don't want your objects to be too big in 2D, right? So I'm showing you this because this is what we're going to do next week. We're going to make our ship kind of the same way. If I want to zoom in, I can zoom in, and I can come as close to the ship as I want. There it is. You can see the defects. Hey, we have a ship with a green glow. Okay, there we go. And this one I can fix because I can come really tight on the bottom, right? You can see that I'm doing that. And again, there's some presets that I can set up, whatever. Let's go on the right side, make sure that the right side is good too. Okay, so there it is on the bottom. And if I double click, then it crops that image. And I can go modify canvas, and if I trim my fit canvas or trim canvas, then I've got my ship. right? Now you notice my ship is now 254 by 276, a little bit better. I can file save, right? Which is an object that I'm using. And then I can take this PNG object and import it into Unity. Okay? I won't do that today. And it's not a great object. It looks like the top of my ship, right? But there's no actual, it looks like more like a rock than a ship, right? But the idea is, this is the idea. The idea is you can take an image, make a real object, put it in 2D by taking away its perspective, if you want, or using lighting to add a special effect, and you don't have to be an artist. You can use Blender to do it for you. Blender is the key here, or Maya, or something else, because I can take an image, a snapshot, at different angles, and I can use it to produce frame rate or frame-based animation. So I can flip between frames, right? So it looks like it's moving, whatever it is. Okay, that's what the trick is here. All right, questions around this stuff. We talked about the tools. I haven't put this stuff up, but we talked about lots of stuff today. The tools and the tool sets. Quit fireworks. One thing to note is that even though I've updated my Blender object, a file save, I haven't updated this one, right, to the web for you guys because, you know, you guys are using the other one in Unity, but it's the same one. I want you to think about ways of being creative with your tools. Sometimes, you know, being put in a box makes us more creative. I always believe that, and I've talked to people about that in the past. It was taught to me. The more tools you have, you know, it's almost like you run away with the stuff that you can do. The less tools you have, all of a sudden you're finding new ways of breaking the box, right? You're finding new ways of expanding or pushing whatever you have. And once you know how to push whatever you have, you can do more with it, right? So what I'm showing you here with Blender is really still, believe it or not, scratching the surface of what Blender can do. Blender is an amazing tool, and so is Maya and 3D Studio Max and all those things. You just have to really focus on learning them. Okay, any questions around the stuff that we've talked about today? Lots of stuff we've covered. It's going to be like this every class, so expect to be a full class of stuff, demos, things to show you. Next week, we're going to start all of our PowerPoints. So you're going to see things like a step through about how to create our side-scrolling game. You're going to get your assignment number 1. Expect a quiz, right, for next week based on the stuff we talked about today. Remember things like rotation, location, and scale, right, that we're going to be talking about. Vertices. We talk about vertices, edges, and faces, right, for every object. We talked about you know, some basic things about Unity, about what the manipulator arms mean, what the green arrow means, what the red arrow means. All those things are the things I'm going to ask you about. Things we covered today in class is fair game for what I'm going to be talking about. And you can certainly look at my videos when you're answering the questions. It's okay because it's going through your brain a couple of times, right? That's the important thing. I'm going to ask you for a shortcut. What's the shortcut key for going to wireframe mode in Blender? Huh? The Z key, right? Is the shortcut key. What's the, you know, he's forgot. What's the shortcut key for rotating in Blender? It's R, right? So those kind of things. I'm going to ask you some of these questions, maybe not all of them, inside of your quiz, and you can take it home and do it the same day, right? But expect an assignment to come next week. Again, we're going to have both classes. I'm going to add a bunch of different things. The other thing I'm going to talk about more about is Git and how to integrate it. Notice that I had to shut down Unity in order for me to put things up on GitHub. It's required. If you don't do that, they have a lot of metadata files that Unity has open while it's running, and you would not capture all of it. That means some of it would not work if you were going to download it again. It would have to rebuild your object in Unity. Check it out when you download mine. See what happens on your homework, and then we'll talk next week. Remember, please use and sign up for Slack, right? If you haven't signed up for it already, it's a tool we're going to be using for communication. You're going to run into problems. You're going to have questions about something that didn't work in Blender, or something that didn't work in Unity, or something you want to try, or an asset that you want to download from the asset store, right? So Unity Asset Store. Go to the Unity Asset Store. It's right here, right? Unity Asset Store has tons and tons of assets that you can grab things from, everything from 3D models, right? As an example, some of them are free, some of them are crazy. You know, to asset kits, to all kinds of stuff. They have amazing sales. They have vegetation if you want to do things like trees that you can download that you want to add to your scene. tons and tons of assets here in the Unity Asset Store. Remember that I'm allowing everything except for scripting. Even if you download an asset with scripts, please don't include them in your game. Right? You have to make your scripts yourself. Okay, that's it. Any questions? I know lots of stuff. Guys, thank you so much. I'll see you next week. And then please send me a Slack message if you have a question.